Welcome to our budget conversations, and tonight we are talking to the chair of the Uganda Manufacturers Association, but she's also, of course, the executive director of the Nice House of Plastics. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. It's quite a difficult time to discuss matters budget amidst the pandemic, COVID-19. But we know that as Uganda Manufacturers Association, you've made your demands and put them across to government. And the economic environment is in such a way that you're trying to make sure your pain is lessened by government. And what are the things you're telling government to address for you to lessen that pain?
Thank you, Morris, and thank you for having me. First off, we have been talking to the government behind the scenes to see how they can probably retweak the budget, because I think the budget discussion started in October. It's now May. The COVID in Uganda, I think, hit us 30th of March when there was a lockdown, and which affected all of us. So the question is, we hope as manufacturers that the government has been able to retweak that budget that they have to speak to the concerns that we have in this particular pandemic. And all this we've talked about, and we've said issues around domestic arrears. Our cash flow has been hit. Our markets have been closed. So it's important that the government can pump a little bit of money with us, but it's not pumping money in us. It's actually paying us what was due. So if they can pay us those domestic arrears, if they can speak to the VAT and the withholding tax refunds that we have, that would go a long way. Go a long way to helping us in our cash flows.
There is the challenge. The budget has majorly been speaking to the issues around import substitution, job creation, yes, and value addition. Yes. You fall in the category of import substitution. Yes. So government has been trying to find a way of supporting industry in Uganda, right, to substitute for the foreign exchange we keep pumping out of the country. Right. Does it speak to you, when you looked at the previous budget, even before the retweaking, was this speaking to you? Because we continuously hear recapitalization of UDB to provide affordable financing for manufacturing, yeah, and agro-processing, because I know you also play a role in there.
I'll give you some statistics. I'll look at plastics, rubber, and related products. In 2015, we imported $261 million worth of products, and that just won that category. Right now, we are at $391 million. That's money that we're pumping out. If I look at vegetable, produce, animal beverages, and fats, we've moved from 352 million to 451. So the talk of import substitution has to happen, because that's money that we're putting out. So if government can, and we're happy to hear that government is going to recapitalize UDB at really high numbers, that would really help our manufacturers and other people get into this business of manufacturing and start changing these figures. Not only this, I mean, we talk about manufacturing, but it's also agro-processing. If you go up that road, if you go up where we are and you go to Namuongo, you'll find a lot of ladies, and all those ladies have got oranges. So everybody's selling either oranges at one time or either pineapples at one time. So by the end of the week, all that produce is going to go off, right? So that produce is going to go off. But what if we had an agro-processing plant? Maybe not in Kampala, but maybe wherever these produce are coming from. I mean, and that's where the government plays. Let us encourage people and put that money into these agro-processing plants, which is going to help these regions develop, put money in people's pockets. That money, when they're growing the pineapples or cassava, they'll come back to me and buy the basin. So that's how it works. So we need to encourage, and we need to make sure that our agro-processing business is improving, and that comes from UDB. You mentioned, I think, I don't know if you did a while ago, about figures. The industrial sector in Uganda, the GDP, we contribute 27%. This is according to UBOS. all right, in 2019. 27%. Well, you have mining, manufacturing, electricity, water, and construction. Agriculture or agro-processing is only 29%. So what we are saying is that manufacturing and agro-processing has a huge impact on people's lives, on employment, and also on putting money in people's pockets to buy the products that the manufacturers were going to develop.
So you're speaking to, VAT refunds, withholding tax refunds. You're speaking to capitalization of your businesses.
Yes.
But many would also be saying, how do you then create aggregate demand in the population to be able to procure your product? But also, I think it's a double-edged sword. How do you make your product competitive in the market to be able to avoid the issues of Ugandans preferring, imported products?
Yeah. I think there's always a market for products, because if we look at the 40 million people, there's going to be different demand for different products. So yes, maybe Morris might not buy my mug, but my people in Masidiva will find it okay to buy that product. But then people in Masidiva don't yet have the money, won't have I need them to have money to buy my product. The only thing that they have in Masidiva is land. And the only thing they can do with that land is to cultivate it, which means then you grow produce. Now, if you grow produce, we want them to be able to get a good price for that produce. And that produce, therefore, has to be processed, agro-processing again. So that is what is going to encourage us. So I think it's a little bit of affirmative action that we need to put in place to see that people are actually getting into that business.
To the budget about value addition. How much more can government support the value addition, say, in agriculture? Because we are talking coffee, we are talking milk, because the value in the finished product after the value addition is actually higher than we are getting for our raw materials.
True. If the government can buy produce when it's in high demand and at a lower price, government, has the advantage that the money that it has is very cheap. So they can buy it, put it in their silos. And then when there's a demand for it, it puts it up out there. But then people don't have to have a problem of buying produce at very high prices, and it's available.
How do we protect the jobs then? Because there's been a challenge within this crisis that a lot of the medium, especially small and medium enterprises, have had either to shut down or lay off a couple of workers so they can remain in operation, at least meet their costs of doing business. Where do you, as chair of the manufacturers, meet government to set benchmarks for remaining at least profitable in the business? Because I'm sure you don't do this for charity.
For charity. Look, there's this concept of buy Uganda, build Uganda. And to us, we are saying that if government can show that they are actually the biggest supporter of that, and they would buy every single thing, because we know government is the biggest buyer. If they could buy everything that all our manufacturers made, which is of good quality and good quality out there, because a lot of our products have good quality. So if they could buy a lot of our produce, of our products, that would really help us on working on the demand side of things. That would be huge.
There's been a conversation in your space, even in the private sector, on reducing the taxes. Yes. There was a conversation on bringing down value-added tax, and I've had this quite a bit, from 18 maybe to 16 or even lesser. There's been a conversation on maybe lessening the pressure by URA for yourselves and others to pay debt, the tax debt that is out there. There's also the conversation around writing off the penalties and interest on some of this tax debt in the private sector. Is that something, as an association, you're looking at to address some of the challenges you're facing?
As an association, I think, like we said, we wanted URA to pay back that money that that we have in VAT and withholding tax. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, if possible, We know that there are a lot of small and medium companies who maybe did not have the right books and therefore fell into challenges with taxes. And in this COVID, they will probably never recover. Probably for those particular entities, it's a time to think and look at resetting it and maybe forgiving, so that they can reset whatever operations they have, and then from now on, make sure that they pay all the taxes that are due. So it's an amnesty that we're asking for those small and medium companies. And then on top of that, we need to provide training, facilities, and this would come, I have to plug my organization, from these business institutions like UMA, which if they were capacitated to help these manufacturers or help these small businesses in training on better bookkeeping, better, all sorts of training, it would help them so that we don't get those problems again. So what am I talking about? I'm really talking around, let's make sure that if we could help those small and medium enterprises with just helping them reset. But I think the biggest one that we're looking at as manufacturers is lowering the interest rate, the interest rates that we borrow. That is a big one, because if we could lower those interest rates, that would help us in this time of COVID to, while our cash flows are a challenge.
All right, we are concluding this, and I really want your parting shots, but I also want to remind you of how the president has been very happy with the manufacturers and the industry for continuing to keep people employed and producing Ugandan products even amidst this crisis. Some of you having to keep your workers on station, yes, so you can actually continue to work. What would be your parting shots amidst this pandemic, looking ahead to the financial year 2020-2021?
I think obviously COVID has been very painful for all of us. But I also feel that there is optimism within our population. And I think we will, probably 6 months down the road, I do see this turning around. Yes, we do have locusts. Yes, we do have, maybe we've been able to, there have been some problems on agriculture, but the fact that we are able to feed ourselves, as I heard on there's a website that I was on, it's important, it's very important. So the fact that we can feed, the population can feed themselves, that's really good. So I do believe that we will come out of this better. Because I'm looking at a lot of the manufacturing entities, how they've had to survive. And a lot of the procedures that they've put in place to overcome them are actually good practices that will take us a long way. So if we do get the support of the government, and we like to thank the government for the support that they've given us, I do believe that it's going to be a positive turnaround. Six months, I think, we'll be able to turn this around.
Thank you very much, Chair. And we're wishing you, better days ahead amidst this pandemic.
Thank you.
And we certainly believe that we should come out of this much stronger. You've been great, innovative as an industry in turning around from producing alcohol to producing sanitizers. Yes. That's been quite interesting in the business. And many are saying out there that probably that's going to be the future of our Ugandan businesses, being able to innovate and adapt to crises to be able to get out of this.
What I have been happy about our manufacturing sector in Uganda is the fact that they've been able to innovate. At the start of this pandemic, we only had about 3 people making sanitizers. Now we have a whole slew of people making sanitizers. So the innovation has been amazing. And also the other thing was their resilience. They've been very resilient in making sure that they can go through this, taking whatever measures possible, but to get them to the end. So I am optimistic. I do believe that we will get over this, and the companies that will go through this will be stronger and more effective and able to deal with whatever comes on next.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you for talking to us. I've been talking to the chairperson of the Uganda Manufacturers Association on their expectations in the budget, a retweak in the budget to do support their industry, but also ensure they keep people on the job, drive aggregate demand so they can procure Ugandan products, help them value add to our produce. That and much more in our conversations of the budget. Do stay with us. You're watching UBC.